Okay, we are back on the second installment on kind of building your charts the way you want them to look in R. If you watch the first one, we're starting where we ended, where we've created this chart, where we've changed the color, we've given the X and Y axis labels, we've changed our limits, and now what we want to do is to talk about how to add lines to the graph. And we're going to do that in two ways. One is a grid, and one is just to add indicator lines on there. And so these are things that once you have called your plot function, or whatever function you're using to make your chart, these are functions that you can run after it, and it will just apply it to the plot you have just created. So the simplest one is grid. And so up here, if I am going into my code, if I just write after my plot grid and I just say open close parentheses and run nothing, it will go ahead and add some grid lines to my graph to maybe make it easier to read, but that may not be enough, or maybe it's more than I want. And so there are a lot of options you can put into grid, but two of the easiest ones is nx equals, and I'm going to say 10, and ny equals 10, and then I'm going to rerun that. And what that is that is the number of X grid lines I want and the number of Y grid lines. So I can change that to whatever I want. I can change NY to 100, and then it's going to set it up to 100 on there. And I think it's going to, unless you tell it otherwise, it's going to update them both on there. But this is a easy way to add some grid lines to maybe make, if you've got a large graph, and it's a little easier to read your data. The other thing that might be helpful to you is just adding a indicator line. So for example, let's say that I knew, this is a chart, if we look down at our labels, of credit limit versus annual income, right? So what if I wanted to add a line at an income of $75,000 because that meant something important to me, and maybe that is my income, right? And so what I'm going to use is the AB line function. This is just a function that just adds a single straight line to your graph. You can actually add angled lines. We're going to talk about that later, but right now we're just going to talk about adding a horizontal or a vertical line. So if I want to add a vertical line, I just put V here to indicate that it's vertical. And then where do I want it? So in this case, let's say I want to indicate my salary. So I'm going to say 75, 1, 2, 3, $75,000. And I can go ahead and run that, and it puts that line in there, but it's just kind of a black line that stands out. I can't tell if that's one of the grid lines, right? And so then I can add options to it, very similar to what I did before. And you can add a lot of different options, but a couple of the important ones that are really useful are LTY. That is my line type. What type of line do I want to add to this? And so you can look online to see the different types, whether you want a solid, a dashed, or a dotted. And so if I put in just a 2 here, then it tells me, it tells R that I want a dashed line there. And already this is a little easier to read. But then I can also add things to, I can say LWD, that is my line width, and I can say, I want to make that 2, and I can see what that looks like. If I want to make that thicker, I could go up to 4. It's starting to look a little ridiculous, so I'm going to put it back down to 2. Now, the other thing I want to do to make this stand out, the last thing, there's a lot of different options, but the last one that's probably important is to make it a different color so it stands out. So I can say it's the same as we had up here when we were making our plot. It's just that COL and the same idea. So I'm just going to say, make that red, and then run it. And there we go. So now I have a red dotted line that stands out, and I can add as many as I want to that. I could add another one and say, in fact, I'm lazy. I'm going to go ahead and copy that and write it here. And I'm going to say I want another one at, let's say, $110,000, and I can run that. But I want that one to stand out, so I'm going to make that one green so that you guys know that it is different than the other ones. Oh, that green is a little hard to see. Let's change it to dark green. Yeah, okay, I like that. So now I have 2 lines in here. But what if I want a horizontal line? Well, it is almost the exact same thing. And I'm going to put in here and say, but instead of V, I'm going to change that to H. And then I'm going to go ahead in here and maybe make a horizontal line at 200,000 and run that in there. And there it is. Now let's differentiate that by saying blue. And so I can use these AB lines, vertical or horizontal, and change up their characteristics to set off either just a value, or maybe I want to use it to highlight a point. And so that is how we add those grids and those lines to our chart. In the next and final part of the charts, we're going to show how do we add a legend to this so that we can actually tell the people who are looking at this what those lines mean. So like again, if you guys have any questions, shoot me a message. Otherwise, I will see you in the next recording.